and welcome to this session on SDG and climate connections in 2025, a look ahead. This is a conversation with UN Under-Secretary General for Economic and Social Affairs, Mr. Lee. Welcome. Welcome in this SDG Pavilion. And so when we talk about connections, SDG and climate, in this world of wars and inequalities, why is it so important to focus on climate action?
Well, thank you, Martina, for having me for this fireside chat on climate and climate action. Well, with regard to your question, my own sense is that there's a strong interlinkages between the peace, security, and the climate or climate change, climate action. As we witness that, on one hand, the regional conflicts, regional instabilities worsening, but at the same time, we also witness that the climate change or the impacts of climate change actually are exacerbating these ongoing vulnerabilities. For instance, like the climate change forced the people leave the place they leave, also that they work, and also climate change actually increase the insecurity on the food chain or the food supply. All in all, this climate change exacerbated the instabilities in the region and the neighboring countries. So that's why we need to prioritize the climate action to calm down the situation on the ground and also create more space for the peace and the security.
And we're here at the UN Climate Conference, COP29, and COP29 is known as the finance COP. Why is finance so important? What will it take to get the finance to the level where it really needs to be?
Well, we know that this COP29 is labeled as a financing COP. To me, it makes a lot of sense because at the heart of the Paris Agreement lies with this nationally determined actions or contributions. How we can implement and accelerate the NDCs. It's all up to the finance, up to the capabilities. But all those NDCs are due next February, and the developing countries are going to submit their new NDCs for the COP30. But before doing that, I guess most developing countries, particularly for those countries in vulnerable situations like the LDCs, seeds, and the LLDC, they need to have a very clear knowledge. How can they motivate and inject more financial resources to support them to implement their national determined plan or determined actions? That's why I believe it is critically important for this COP29 to come up with an agreement on the new target for the global financing mechanism for the NDCs and also for the climate action. So that's why we have a great expectations for this COP29. And just one particular point I want to highlight. The last May, we have this Seeds Forward, or the fourth international conference on small island developing countries in Antigua and Barbuda. One of the themes discussed at this Seeds Forward is how we can mobilize and inject additional resources for the countries like seeds, who are so vulnerable and fronted for this climate consequence. But then we'll say, Secretary General highlighted very much. Seeds are a testing case for climate justice and finance justice. So I guess millions of the people in 6 countries are very much watching what happened here and what can facilitate them to move ahead.
And we are. This is the very first day of this conference. So, what do you expect to see over the next 2 weeks? What are your hopes and expectations for this conference?
Well, talking about expectations, I guess everyone has his own perspectives. But for me, for UN DESA, we really want to see that this COP29 focus at least 3 major areas. Number one, it's urgent actions on climate change. Number two, it's intensified commitments, including the financing targets. Number three, more inclusive dialogue among the various stakeholders. Let me just say a few words why those 3 areas are so crucially important to achieving the SDGs. We know SDGs is the implementation of the SDGs is off the track. But part of this is because of the exacerbating impacts of the climate change. So that is why we need to see the urgent actions to accelerate the actions on combating climate change. And with that, we also need to see that the new commitment from our partners, particularly with regard to capacity building and the financing, finance allocations. But of course, we know the climate actions is not exclusively up to the government. We need to embrace all stakeholders, including women, including youth, including indigenous groups, and also very essentially important to bring about the private sector to attract more investment from the market on the climate action.
And well, what happens here doesn't stay here. How do you see the outcomes and discussions of this conference carrying forward into 2025?
Well, certainly COP29 will lay down a new roadmap. It will serve as a new starting point for our further exercise. As far as DESA is concerned, there will be 3 major events next year. Number one, we come with this 3rd UN Ocean Conference to be held in Nice, France, next June. The theme, one of the themes for this UNOC 3 will be on the ocean ecosystem. We know that the oceans are severely impacted by climate change. So the climate change or climate financing to be adopted by COP will certainly generate strength, input for the ocean conference next year. And second one is the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development. Just now, as I said, that among all the 17 SDGs, we left behind our commitment. We need to accelerate. So that's why what to be emerged as a consensus, as agreement from COP29 will certainly push the discussions at FFD4 for additional financing. Last but not least, it's about the 2nd World Social Summit or 2nd World Summit on Social Development. We all know that our motto for SDG is to leave no one behind. But unfortunately now, billions of the people suffered from this climate impacts. And we need to bring back our focus on our own people to inject a more social dimension. That is why the outcome from this COP29 will certainly provide more impacts on our discussions for the 2nd World Summit on Social Development. Thanks.
So a really big year ahead.
Absolutely.
All the best, and thanks for this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.